Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'm personally very excited about this conversation. We've heard a little bit earlier today from a range of fantastic panels how artists and creatives, cultural organizations are using technology, things to be wary about with technology. And today, what we're going to focus on in this session is how artists and creatives are shaping technology. And I don't just mean technology usually associated with the arts. I mean really frontier tech, so obviously AI, but also quantum, robotics, which we'll focus on today. I couldn't think of two better people to speak about this topic. I have Sougwen here, who is an artist and researcher and pioneer in human-machine collaboration. Sougwen's work spans installation, sculpture, drawing, and performance in dialogue with really advanced technologies like, as I said, machine learning, biosensing, and robotics. But what I love about you, Sougwen, is you've had so many accolades in the arts, but also in the tech world, including being named Time's 100 most influential people in AI recently. So really loving that cross-pollination. And Piotr, you as well.
Hello.
As Nihal said, Piotr is a staff research scientist at Google DeepMind, has released over 75 papers and patents in the idea of exploring the idea of AI in the real world, including in human-machine collaboration as well. But not just in the tech world, Piotr is also a trained actor and is the founder and director of a theatre company called Improbiotics. Improbiotics or Improbotics?
The second one.
Okay, there we go. Not probiotics, everyone. So we're so excited to have you here as well. Before we start, I just wanted to start with a little provocation from a recent report we just did at the British Council. I've got the hard copy here, which is my prop. And that is why technology needs artists, which is kind of what we'll be touching on today. I hope you've scanned the QR code. Find me after if you do want a hard copy. And where we started with this report, me and my co-editor Hannah Andrews, was in these forums we were seeing over and over again this exact question: what is the impact of technology on the arts? And there's so many really valid questions there, but what we wanted to do was flip that narrative to something a lot more active, to look at the impact of the arts and artists on technology. And so we invited 56 leaders in arts and technology across the world, across 24 countries, and you will see Piotr and Sougwen's names there. So lucky to have you both. And really what came from this research is 4 main insights, advocating for this idea of artist-led innovation. You'll see them on screen. Please do delve into them further. But really it's looking at artists as catalyzing technological advancement, delivering socio and economic value mutually while doing that. And then from a global perspective, through education and public engagement, creating more resilient global networks, more sustainable technology. And number 4, which I think is the most kind of intangible, but also the most exciting, proposing hopeful futures, which I think is something really inspiring, often in a world where technology at the moment can be polarizing or disenfranchising. So let's get into the meat of it. I think Sougwen and Piotr can describe all of these insights much better than me. Sougwen, I wanted to start really at the base, which is this idea of research and development. And I've seen your work be described as art as robotics research. I'm wondering, through your practice, how do you unveil things? Do you unveil things that are different to maybe a traditional engineer would unveil? I'll pass this over to you as well.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here. Can you hear me all right? Yeah? Okay, great. So my practice, I've been really thinking about the evolution of the human hand and how technology can really contribute to that evolution. I think there's so many really interesting questions that technology raises to the expansion of the human subject, how we relate to each other and communicate. So it's really been at the heart of what I really care about. I have a background as an engineer and an artist. I started kind of with both languages at a really young age. You'll see here a new installation that we released last year called Spectral, in which two custom robotic systems are linked to my own brainwave data. And we can get a little bit more into the details of that later. But I really kind of resist this idea that art and technology are so separate. I find, and by kind of blurring those lines, by having that kind of willful ignorance into these kind of categories that I feel like we're so fully placed in a lot of these times, I've developed 10 years of drawing operations, which is kind of what you see back there. Drawing operations unit generation 1, and now we're in our 6th generation. Traces, curiosities and questions I have about how technology is shaping us, but how also we can think about artistic practice as shaping technology. So each generation is a provocation around a certain topic: mimicry, memory, collectivity, spectrality, assembly. And I get to explore and kind of reinvent certain systems of sensing, of data collection, of machine learning through the lens of my own gesture and my own personal data. And it's been a really kind of fascinating space to play, but also to collaborate with different institutions and engineers. You'll see here a little bit, just a really quick outline of how each system is built, and some of the questions that are really at the central sort of space of each movement. And what I love about it is because it takes something like an emerging technology at the time and creates an archive of its use, which kind of plays with this idea of modernity and futurity through embodied collaboration. I love that in this work I've evolved alongside the system. I think this process of coevolution is also really integral in my own artistic sentiment and my own desires as an engineer. So I think that's been a way, and I'm so honored to be here talking about this with you. It's been a way to really think about how we can shape the technology that shapes us. I really believe strongly that artists have a really significant role to play, and I think we're just at the beginning of this type of collaboration.
Thanks, Sougwen. I love that idea of co-evolution. I think I've been co-evolving with my phone and having no idea even what that even means. So I think, you know, at the peak of that, I'm so excited that you're really having in-depth thought and research around this kind of idea of how we engage with technology. I wanted to ask you a similar question, Piotr. When you work with artists, particularly comedians, musicians, theatre makers, and what I love about your work is that you really engaged them at the start of this R&D process. And so I'm wondering, what outcomes have you seen change in your work when you do this? And how do you kind of scale this at a research organization?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'm very honored to be here. So thank you, Aurora. Thank you, Sougwen. Thank you all. I would say that essentially what I'm trying to do is dialogue, which has two different versions of it. One is confrontation, and the other is negotiation. And there is a meeting of different perspectives that always happens. So my general background is actually computer science. I did a PhD in computer science 15 years ago at New York University with one of the so-called godfathers of deep learning, Professor Yann LeCun, at the time when the word artificial intelligence was a dirty word. I think it's a dirty word today again, but for different reasons. How times change. So I joined 11 years ago Google DeepMind to do reinforcement learning, navigation, weather forecasting, working on algorithms. But at the same time, I really love theatre. passionately. I went to drama school part-time. And also, if this works, we can see some pictures of what I did 10 years ago, which was bring robots on stage to do improv comedy and improvised theater alongside another large cast of human beings who were interacting with technology, with augmented reality glasses, with chatbots, with robots, with different forms of generative AI. Trying to essentially get the audience suggestions and to build narratives together. And it wasn't always easy. As one of our reviewers put it in 2017, 2 stars, chaotic, never work with robots. Did we listen? Absolutely not. We persevered. And we have been touring internationally and bringing the show to Edinburgh Fringe for 4 times, 3 times in a row already. So alongside that interaction with robots and actors on stage, so the AI is being trained. So I've been training AI models to do improv comedy, and we've been training as actors to interact with that strange stage partner. So alongside, we essentially developed some sort of theater lab where we practice with the affordances of the technology. And that gave me ideas back to my day job at Google DeepMind. So with my Improbotics co-founder, Corey Matthewson, we wrote in 2022 a paper co-writing screenplays and theater scripts of language models and evaluation by industry professionals. Ooh, we are getting into language models territory here, and it's literally into the meat of the big controversy. So this is something that we did in 2022, before ChatGPT, before it was even in the general consciousness. And we interrogated, we ran workshops with playwrights and screenwriters, trying the tool that we had developed and collecting candid feedback on all the ethical issues, starting from the cannibalization of creative economies to the copyright violations, and simply to the problems of bias, but also the limitations of large language models in storytelling because they just produce derivative slop. But also some interesting feedback about the fact that it could potentially be useful in getting ideas. And even something I really loved, one of the playwrights who tried the model said, I want ideas that a human couldn't possibly have. And I think that this is a lost opportunity we haven't really explored with AI. How can it actually help us go beyond the human frame if we really use it in the right way instead of just replacing ourselves? So the paper was published, presented in 2023, and we had all this evaluation with playwrights, and we continued the work a few years later, and we released a tool called Fabula. It's released on request, and this tool is essentially a narratology tool that allows the writer to structure the storytelling into different bits, scenes, beats, motivations of a character, etc. And in the development process of that, we have involved playwrights and screenwriters getting the feedback as early as possible to understand what they actually wanted and what they didn't want in the tool. That's how we understood that we needn't do a generator, and instead it was preferable to have something that analyzes stories and gives feedback. And I can show some video, perhaps, visuals of how it looks like. Oh, this is actually still Dramatron. Okay, so that's how it looked like, and we had evaluated it on stage with actors. The image is coming up. Okay, but then this is Fabula. Is the video going to play? Perhaps.
Fabula can help us write high-quality stories by producing a detailed story plan. We use ideas from narratology to inform the structure of that story plan. And we base our system on a book called The Classical Plot and the Invention of Western Narrative by Nick Lowe. This book describes the cognitive updates of the reader's mental model as they consume the text.
Okay, we have a stop-motion animation of the video. Which is great, because I'm now going to show a stop-motion animation of Natalia Korczakowska, director of the Polish National Theatre, Teatr Studio, who was writing a play about AI, about AlphaGo, actually, and who evaluated the tool and who gave us some feedback. So maybe I can just finish this question with her words. if it plays.
So change the perspective in the way in which you see theater. And I hope for that. I refuse to be a victim of artificial intelligence. That's not interesting for me. I prefer to play with this tool and look for the way that it can enrich theater.
All right, that was my answer to the question.
Thank you, thank you.
Fantastic.
And I'm seeing so many kind of, I think you hold on to that, Sougwen.
I will.
I'm seeing so many through lines here between your work from a kind of primarily tech perspective and a primarily arts perspective, especially around human in the loop, which is obviously why we're here today. Sougwen, you talk about human gesture, Piotr around human storytelling, and I know often that's in improvisation and comedy, so, humor and things like that, which, are essentially human. Sougwen, really, how have you seen in your artistic practice bringing these kinds of robots or AI technologies more aligned with kind of what it means to be human, and then maybe take it a step further and break that and explore what it could be what it could mean in collaboration with a machine?
Sure. I wanted to note, I feel like I'm really fascinated by improv, actually. And one thing I really love about it, because you said that Piotr is working more in like language and text, I actually find the physical cues of improv one of the most kind of captivating aspects of that kind of improvisational collaboration. I feel like that resonates a lot with how I've thought about building my drawing operations unit. And I love that there's an uncertainty principle in there. I love that it is about what's unspoken and what's not necessarily kind of really spelled out. I think there's this idea that we can control creativity, control technology, and I find performance really turns that idea on its head, and I've been thinking about that. You asked about kind of the human in the loop in the work. Oftentimes that is myself. I think I try to be the human in the loop in my drawing collaborations, but I'll give you an example of one of the, I wouldn't call them use cases, but I'll call them use cases here. I read a paper that cited that when a human being is in an elevated state of creative flow, their alpha waves are heightened. And I realized that this was a really rife area for artistic research, but also sensor development, and sort of expanding my own ability to work with EEG data. So I created in, you're nodding like you've read a little bit about this kind of research. It's really, really fascinating. But I love that technology became a catalyst and art practice became a catalyst for entering into a different state of creative flow. My fifth generation of Doug, centered on spectrality, really brought that into the fore. In the configuration, I meditate with a brainwave headset, and then I draw alongside the robotic system when I'm in a heightened state of a kind of creative immersion. And what I love about that is I've been able to bring back this idea that mark making and performance have something at risk. Here I am performing this configuration, I think last year at the V&A, and it's a very meditative performance in general, but it's really reliant on my own proprioception, my own ability to learn and adapt my own system to the environment with which I'm in. And by sharing that as a performance, we create a microcosm for the community to speak about how these systems are built, whether, what kind of emotional experience that evokes, and sort of opens up, I think, a dialogue into the possibility of using robotics beyond automation, of art making beyond drawing. And for me, it's been a way to explore how we actually fit in in this loop or grid, and to really have an embodied sense of thinking about this configuration and the balance of it, and sort of really reestablishing a sense of agency within the tools of the day. It moves into a lot of other spaces around sensor development, obviously, but also new types of materiality for machinic systems. Through this work, it's been exciting because it's really expanded my idea of what a robotic system is and can be, and we're moving into a new kind of phase of robotics, machine learning, and bioengineering, really thinking about the bedrock of technology and turning that on its head. So it's been a very catalytic time for thinking about not just how humans operate in this loop of human and machine collaboration, but how we really instigate our environment and new researches, new advances in different fields beyond AI and machine learning in the space.
Thanks, Sougwen. And Piotr, I know that you've written around, especially in this Why Technology Needs report, what needs artist report. When we talk about human in the loop, you bring up this idea of cultural diversity and cultural specificity. And I know you've done research around how, humans inherently diverse, that when we engage artists or different cultures in tech development, again, at an early stage or in the process of research and development, we could potentially make more culturally diverse technologies. Could you touch on that a little bit?
Yes. Well, first of all, I just want to say this is super cool, the slides I just seen. But to answer to the question, what we did was to actually increase the scope of our dialogue. So before, we only had a dialogue between the technologist and the artist. But that's not enough sometimes. So because the artist typically is accountable to the art world, to what psychologist Howard Becker defined as the extended art world, which is all the network of art curators, museum curators, gallery owners, people involved in the distribution of art, and the audiences. And so we increased the scope of the dialogue to encompass the art world as well. And that actually allowed the artist to talk more freely and deeply about the questions of representation and whether the AI tool that we tried to integrate in the practice was actually doing the right job. So the way our approach worked was that we had those sessions, dialogue with the art world and dialogue with the machine, interleaved, where the artists were discussing with the curators, who were challenging and prompting them with some tasks to accomplish using the tools and trying to relate to specific image archives. The artists in question were three established artists, visual artists from the Iranian diaspora, and the three art curators were from the VNA and other art institutions specialized in Persian art. And we, the researchers, so Rida Kadri and I, were simply fly-on-the-wall observers, facilitators of the dialogue and the exchange, taking notes for everything that we had to fix as technologists. We also engaged in sessions of speculative design of what potentially could be done to make the system work better. And what was interesting was how the artists actually hacked the systems. So for instance, one of the artists, Arusia Gabrielan, who is a designer and an architect, was trying, and that was 2 years ago, to get various image generators to generate images of vases and rugs with the expression, motto, Women, Life, Freedom. And it was extremely complicated to actually get those image generators to do that. And all she managed to do was something that looked like Orientalist squibbles from Orientalist representations. And so she highlighted the various biases in those tools that were very Western-centric and not taking into account non-Western perspectives. Another artist was discussing about the fact that the data sets and even the methods prevented cultural institutions in various countries from having the sovereignty over their own cultural archives. And so they tried to speculate how we could establish AI models, build AI models that preserve the cultural sovereignty of each location. And finally, another artist, Farbod Mer, tried to do some reparative AI. So what he did, in order to counteract the lack of representation of Persian art and also Persian women simply in what was generated, he trained specific versions of Stable Diffusion with alternatively photos from the Qajar era Persia, as well as Qajar art, and finally images sent by his followers on Instagram for modern day, which was interesting. And he would make different versions of this and iterate and refine and sculpt these outputs, trying to essentially subvert the limitations, the original limitations of a tool.
I think that's so striking. Those images are incredibly powerful, and this is something that we've definitely been focusing on at the British Council, looking at how we kind of move away from Western ideas of technology. I would love to end on an improv session between you two, but I don't think we have time. Instead, I want to turn really... Instead, I really want to turn to maybe more practical response into how we sustain your work from an ecosystem perspective. I think so many brilliant minds are working in this way, often with tech and artistic skills within their own background. Obviously, collaborations are happening as well, but how do we sustain this? And if you had one piece of advice to kind of an AI team or an artist studio or even a bigger institution, how would you think we can bring tech more in alignment with human values and really invest in this kind of work? Piotr, I might turn to you first.
Yes. There is a push towards building very generalistic models, but of course, as some comedians told us when we did a participatory study in Edinburgh, if you try to make something that is funny to everyone, it ends up being nobody's favorite thing. And there is essentially a lack of agency sometimes in the artists who engage with those AI tools over how those systems are built. So they often face the fact that those tools can be even doing censorship inadvertently and cultural erasure by trying to be safe. And those tools forget the context in which the artists use them, which is in itself a safe space for experimentation. So an advice to tech companies would be to actually try to take into account the agencies of the users, especially in the artistic field, to explore and to push against the tools in their creative practice.
Sougwen,
maybe you have advice for tech companies as well.
I've got advice all day for tech companies. I think there's so many different directions, right? I do fundamentally believe that artists are really good at exploring, but artists are also really good at breaking things. Mm-hmm. Artists are really good at making meaning. Artists are, and I sort of would counter this division between artists here and technologists here. I think we have kind of more in common when it comes to our interest in exploring the human subject, exploring our own agency, exploring tool making. Artists have been making tools for as long as there have been artists. I think tech companies and technologists, tech companies are just made up of people who are technologists. So I think there's a lot of really generative dialogue to be had there. I've explored a lot of interesting ideas through residencies. I love this idea of kind of collaborative immersion, but not at kind of the shallow level of like testing a product. I don't think that's as interesting as really getting on the ground level and having conversations about what we build and why, understanding that kind of bias is always inherent to any system, but actually to loop back into what you said, Piotr, really working with the specificity of artistic language and artistic practice in building more equitable systems.
Fantastic. I think it's so clear why we need artists in the development of technology. And I think looking at this idea of human in the loop, maybe moving a little bit forward to think about artist in the loop, really for these advanced technologies. I know that's something that many of our peers are exploring. So thank you so much for joining me today. And please join us after as well if you have questions in the cafe.